So this video is going to kind of be where to start when you buy an LS. So you just bought an LS, what do? Well, first off, you're going to want to get it home, get it on an engine stand, and kind of assess it. But before all of that, you need to know what LS to look for. And so I'm going to kind of walk through that really briefly. There's a bunch of good videos that have tons more information. But as far as picking out what LS you want, whether that's a Gen 3, Gen 4, Gen 5, there's a few different things you need to take into consideration. So I usually just stay away from Gen 5s. There's a lot of electronics. They're kind of updated. I'm sure they're great, but they're most expensive and hard to find parts for, and they're just a little bit harder to get around and all that just in general. So I would stick with Gen 3, Gen 4. Gen 3 is going to be your cheapest, your easiest, and they have tons of accessories. Gen 4s are also really good. They're just a little bit more expensive. The parts are a little bit more expensive, and then they have a few different options. So this is a Gen 3, but on the Gen 4s, they'll have a sensor plugged in here on this front cover or timing case, and that's how you can tell if it's a Gen 4. That's going to cause a few issues down the road. So if you have a Gen 4 and it has the sensor, a lot of people will swap the cams out to get rid of some of those things. So that's why I went with a Gen 3. Gen 3s, how to identify Gen 3s is number one, if they, on the throttle body, it'll have a cable. Mine's is still a Gen 3, but it was drive-by-wire, so it was electronic plug. But like I said, first thing to check is the timing case, see if it has a sensor. If it doesn't have a sensor, you know you got a Gen 3. Second thing to check is on the bottom of the engine, I believe on the passenger side, right next to the starter, is your crank sensor, I believe is what they call it. And if it's gray, it's a Gen 4 or newer. If it's a black, so the plastic sensor, if it's black, it's Gen 3. Gen 3s are pretty easy, but that's kind of how you decide. But moving on to getting the engine set up in your garage to where you can actually work on it, do a refresh. What I did is I got it off the trailer onto an engine stand, which will be later in the video. But I also pulled the exhaust manifolds. That's really good to do. Those can be tricky because it is an aluminum head and the bolts are steel. Sometimes after heating, cooling, you go to break those loose, they snap pretty easy. So you have to weld a little bit. And sometimes tap and die to get those out. So that's what I would do, is I'd pull the exhaust manifold and then I would go ahead and try and get the engine harness off. Number one thing with the engine harness is don't be worried about it. I was kind of worried about mine when I was pulling it for the first time, but honestly these engine harnesses are set up to where the plugs really only can go one way. So the way that they work is they kind of start at the top and they wind their way down and around. So you start at the top and just start undoing the clips. Word of advice is just take your time. You don't want to break a clip on the engine side. If you do, you're going to just be in more trouble. So just try and take your time. Make sure when you undo everything that you do it nicely. After that, I got it bolted onto my engine stand, got it pulled over, and as you can see, it's already disassembled pretty far, but that's going to be in the next video. All right. We're going to find the engine buried in here. Let's see what we can find. Work on the teardown. I need to get this strap cut off. That is how they lifted it on the trailer. And then I need to get the exhaust manifold bolts out. These are usually a pain because this is, steel or iron, or I don't know what it is, but this is aluminum. So they're two different metals. So these bolts, when they get hot and cold, they tend to seize in there, break off, and cause a lot of trouble. So I've been letting it sit with some WD-40. Manifolds off, all the bolts came out, except for this one I had to hammer a smaller socket on it because it was stripped out. It was just so old. So ended up getting it out, but that whole side is off and we'll keep on moving. Next, I'm gonna get just some contact cleaner and clean this surface and then tape it off so that no debris or anything can get into the exhaust ports. Finished up, got the whole wiring harness off. That was a huge part. I kind of started here on the passenger side of the engine, and you work your way around, and then it has a few grounds on the bottom and then a wire that wraps underneath. So you kind of start at the top and wind your way around, and that's how you get the harness off. Okay, before I put the engine stand connector on, I'm gonna pull off the flywheel just because I think when I have all of the engine stand parts connected on here, I won't be able to take the flywheel off. I still think I can get to the rear main seal and everything, but I'm just gonna take this off just as a precaution, even though I might be able to get to it. So I'm gonna get the rest of this pulled off. Thank you for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. We got the wiring harness off, we got the exhaust manifold off, we got it bolted to an engine stand, we got it moved off the trailer, and that's kind of where you want to start, is just get the basics taken off. So I just appreciate you watching. The next video is where we're going to get down to the nitty and gritty. We're going to actually pull the timing cover, replace the timing belt, or excuse me, timing chain and gear. Also, we're going to replace the seals and everything in there, as well as on the back. We're going to replace the rear main seal, all the gaskets. I'm going to paint these red. We're going to paint the iron block blue, and we're just going to clean up the engine. As you can tell, it's just dirty. We got to get a bunch of stuff removed. So that's the next video, full refresh on a junkyard motor and what to look for. So again, thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe. If you haven't, this is going in my 1970 C10. Kind of doing an off-road build, so go ahead and check that out. There should be a few videos on my page. But again, thanks everybody for watching.